It all started with a glare. You know the kind of glare I'm talking about, the one that says, "You don't belong here." The one that cuts deeper than words ever could. I had just boarded a long-haul flight, ticket in hand, assignment in mind. To everyone else on that plane, I was just another passenger. But in reality, I was the Federal Air Marshal assigned to that flight. My job was simple: blend in, keep my eyes open, and make sure everyone on board got to their destination safely. But before the plane even left the ground, one passenger made it her mission to make me feel unwelcome. And trust me, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Now, here's the thing about my job. It requires invisibility. I don't wear a uniform. I don't carry a visible weapon. I look like an ordinary traveler, business casual clothes, backpack, boarding pass. That's the whole point. If trouble ever breaks out, I need the element of surprise. On this particular flight, my seat assignment was in first class. That might sound luxurious, but it's not for comfort, it's for logistics. The front of the plane is a strategic position if an emergency ever happens. So I walked down the jet bridge, nodded politely to the flight attendants, and made my way to my seat. And that's when she appeared, Karen. She was already sitting 2 rows ahead, oversized designer sunglasses still on, a scarf wrapped dramatically around her neck, and a glass of pre-boarding champagne in her hand. As soon as I placed my bag in the overhead bin, I felt her eyes on me. The judgment was instant, like she had already decided my worth based on my clothes. "Excuse me," she said loudly enough for half the cabin to hear, "I think you're in the wrong section. Economy is back there." I glanced at my ticket, then back at her. "No, ma'am. This is my seat." Her lips curled into a smirk. "Are you sure? People like you don't usually fly first class." Now, I could have ignored her. But the way she said people like you hit differently. It wasn't just about clothes. It wasn't just about class. It was about something deeper, about judgment, about prejudice. The flight attendant, sensing tension, stepped in. "Sir, is everything all right?" I smiled politely. "Everything's fine. Just taking my seat." But Karen wasn't done. Not even close. Once we were airborne, Karen turned her comments into a full-blown performance. She complained loudly that the cabin was being cheapened by the airline letting anyone sit up front. She made snide remarks every time I reached for water or adjusted my seat. At one point, she even flagged down a flight attendant and demanded to know why I was allowed to be in first class. "This man doesn't belong here," she huffed. "He's clearly not first-class material." The attendant, to her credit, tried to defuse the situation. "Ma'am, all passengers seated here have valid tickets." But Karen wouldn't let it go. "I don't believe that. I want proof. Show me his boarding pass." That's when I knew things were getting out of hand. Normally, I'd let rude behavior slide. But when it starts to disrupt the crew, the comfort of other passengers, and the order of the cabin, it's no longer just rude, it's a problem. And problems on airplanes? That's my jurisdiction. Things finally came to a head about 3 hours into the flight. Dinner service had just ended, the cabin lights dimmed, and most passengers were settling in for some rest. But Karen wasn't resting. She stood up, marched over to my row, and practically loomed over me. "Listen," she hissed, "you need to move. Either go back to coach or I'm calling security when we land. People like you don't get to sit here." I looked her dead in the eye and said calmly, "Ma'am, sit down." "Now." She scoffed. "Or what? What are you going to do? You're not in charge of anything." That was the moment. The moment where she thought she had all the power. The moment where she had no idea that the man she'd been harassing for hours was the one person on that plane with real authority. So I reached into my jacket, pulled out my credentials, and placed them firmly on the tray table. "Actually," I said, "I am." Her eyes went wide as she read the words, "Federal Air Marshal." The blood drained from her face. The arrogance vanished. For the first time the entire flight, she was speechless. The other passengers craned their necks, murmurs rippling through the cabin. The flight attendants, who had been watching closely, exchanged relieved glances. I continued, my voice steady but firm. Ma'am, you have interfered with crew operations, harassed multiple passengers, and created a disturbance in this cabin. That is a federal offense. You will return to your seat, and you will remain silent for the rest of this flight. Do you understand? She stammered. I didn't know. I was just, do understand. I repeated. Her shoulders slumped. Yes. For the remaining hours of the flight, Karen didn't say another word. She sat stiffly in her seat, avoiding eye contact with anyone, sipping nervously at her water. Meanwhile, the rest of the cabin visibly relaxed. People smiled at me, nodded in approval, and a few even whispered, "Thank you." When we finally landed, federal security was waiting at the gate. I walked off the plane first, handed over my incident report, and watched as Karen was quietly escorted away for questioning. She wasn't arrested, but she was flagged for her behavior, a mark that would follow her on future flights. And me? I went on to my next assignment, just another day on the job. So what's the takeaway here? It's simple. Power isn't about money, status, or the seat you're sitting in. Real power doesn't come from belittling others. It comes from respect, integrity, and responsibility. Karen thought she could humiliate me, that by saying, "People like you don't belong," she could strip me of my worth. But what she didn't realize is that the very person she was trying to push down was the one tasked with keeping her safe. She thought she was protecting the exclusivity of first class, but in reality, she was insulting the only person on that flight sworn to protect every single soul on board, including her. And that's the irony. In her attempt to exclude me, she revealed her own ignorance. She wanted control, she wanted to feel superior, but the only thing she gained was embarrassment. The louder she shouted about who belonged where, the clearer it became that she didn't even understand what true belonging meant. Because in the end, respect isn't something you demand with arrogance or buy with money. It's something you earn through your actions, through the way you treat people, through the character you show when no one's watching. Karen thought she owned first class. She thought the seat, the champagne, and the price tag gave her authority. But the truth? She never even belonged in the conversation. Because titles fade, wealth comes and goes, but integrity, that's permanent. And in the real world, it's not about who sits in the nicest seat. It's about who stands tall when it matters most. And that's the story, folks. Karen thought she could throw her weight around and decide who belonged where, but in the end, the only thing she managed to do was embarrass herself. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more crazy tales, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. And hey, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take. Until next time, remember, respect is earned, not demanded. Stay safe, stay kind, and I'll catch you in the next story.